Hey Woodlanders, welcome to another woodlog. It's kind of fitting that I'm chucking wooded logs into a basket. It's Tuesday today. Monday we were out at a place called Twin Lakes in Melton Mowbray. It's an adventure park for kids. So we had a day out together. This morning we've got rain. So we've not had rain for about a month. We've got rain. I'm not complaining. Today is the 28th of February. If you're anything like me, February has gone so fast. But this morning's mission, we've got to nip and meet Ian. Ian Varl is a traditional woodworker. Got to meet him at Tesco's, because everyone knows where Tesco's is. And he's got some ash poles he's buying off me for some construction or other. Once we've done Ian, back over this way, try and get some more brush cutting done. We'll see how far we get with that and try and get a fair old bit of that knocked off today and quite possibly tomorrow. Just a little bit on the cold side as well this morning. Oh, I've just spotted some daffodils. Now these days, I don't normally tend to plant cultivated daffodils in the woodland because the whole cross-pollination thing, but it is nice just to see a few daffs. Good old-fashioned daffodils. There are some native daffs which I think are called Narcissus something. I'll have to check that. But they tend to come up a little bit later, and they're a lot softer, a bit more creamy, nowhere near as tall. They've not got these long stalks to them. That means that spring is just around the corner. That's Ian all sorted. He's happy with his poles. You'll have to forgive the state of my welding, but what I did, whoopsie daisy, don't do that. I got a big washer, reduced its outer circumference and changed its inner circumference, welded it into there, so you'll see that that's kind of like my version of the washer that you have to put in. Of course it was an alloy one and it was smashed to bits. The welds are only there to keep it in place so the thing doesn't jiggle about, because the minute that thing moves it comes off its, let me show you, it comes off this bit here. Look, I've got my hands full. So this ring here, that actually looks like it's been damaged slightly, but this ring here, it comes off that, and then the whole lot just jiggles about all over the place, makes a right mess. Just got to get this file, make some last minute modifications so that fits on there nice and snug. You would think on a thread you've got lefty loosey, righty tighty. This is the opposite. It's lefty tighty, righty loosey. We'll grease it the end before we start. We're all set for some more bramble smashing. Let's go. Freezing. It was interesting just chatting to Ian in Tesco's car park. He was saying that he hasn't had any enquiries for the whole of winter. So he said he's had work that's carried him through the winter, but no new inquiries, which I thought it was just me, but it seems the craft sector is having a bit of a bad time. He said in 15 years he's never had a February where he's not had work. That's a real worry, isn't it? Anyway, his name's Ian Varley. I'll put a link to his website in the description below. Go and have a look at his website, check out Ian. Honestly, he's a fabulous guy, such a lovely bloke. He's got a little lad, his mum's got dementia, she's not doing very well, and he looks after his mum, so give Ian some love. Go and have a look at his website, send him a message, he's on Facebook, and let's see if we can drum up a bit of work for Ian. .4% battery. I'll give you a quick spin round. Done all round here now, and then I've gone into some goat willow down that lot. Done all in there, and done round here as well, which was this. You couldn't even penetrate it. It was up in the trees. You can still see some of it here. Look, but it's all been severed at the bottom. Sorry about that. Battery went flat. You'll be pleased to know that the brush cutter blade modification seems to be working really well. I've not had to tighten it or anything. I'm going to go home. I've had enough today, my shoulders hurt carrying that brush cutter around all afternoon. Interesting one with the brush cutter blade. Now I've got my little washer thing sorted. You can operate it on sort of half revs, which makes the petrol last, I reckon, at least twice as long. I used to get about an hour and 15 minutes out of a tank full with the Technic blades, and I reckon I get about 2.5 hours. What have I done today? About 2 hours, and I'm not quite run out. So money saving tip there, get an Oregon shredder blade, you might save some fuel. We'll see you in the morning. Morning. Today is pretty much a repeat of yesterday. More bramble bashing, but we are making some significant progress, which is good. There was a really interesting one last week on them there social media thingies. There's a chappie named Andy. He's down from Hampshire somewhere down there. He's a coppice worker. He often talks about the amount of hazel coppice in Hampshire that isn't being cut on its regular rotation, and he has a huge fear that it will go out of rotation because there's not enough coppice workers down that way to cut it, which I think is a valid point, really. You want more coppice workers to work the hazel so that you get a continuous supply of good quality rods. And so what he does, he encourages people to go down up, cross to Hampshire to go and help cut the coppice. I do know of another chap called Alistair. He travels from Matlock, which is north of where we are. It's about an hour away from where we are. Travels all the way down to Hampshire, cuts the hazel, and then travels all the way back. And he said it's absolutely brilliant. The hazel down there is insanely good. It's all like javelins and arrows. But I think what Alistair does, he goes down on one day with his big trailer, his big truck, and he'll spend anything up to 3 to 4 days cutting, and then travel back on the last day. But I think he stays in an overnight caravan. But with Andy saying that more people should travel, then it got me thinking, should that's what I'd be doing? Should I be going to travel to Hampshire to go and cut some hazel coppice? And part of me thinks it'd be really nice to have some decent hazel to work with, but the other part of me thinks, well, I should still concentrate on trying to get some of the National Forest hazel cut, because if it's never cut up this way, then we'll never have rotational hazel either. The ideal scenario would be lots more coppice workers in the world selling their wares, cutting the woods. He feels that getting hazel into rotation, either from maiden cut or complete derelict hazel coppice, is a complete and utter waste of time. He's quite vocal about that. Now, I tend to disagree, but I see where he's coming from, in that the amount of time and effort it takes to cut derelict hazel, and all you're going to get out of it is firewood and charcoal and a couple of rods. All of that takes an inordinate amount of time, Then you've got the second cut. So your very next cut after your derelict cut is usually a bit messy. You don't get good rods, you get quite a few stall deaths. You've got to gap up or layer, and so your next cut in 6 years time is going to be a bit limited on what you get, but it'll be better than your original maiden cut. Now, I'm not about to travel down to Hampshire because I'm not prepared to stay in a caravan for 4 days a week away from family, spending what for me would be a ridiculous amount of fuel just to get down there, just to get hazel rods to bring all the way back up. It just somehow seems a bit environmentally insensitive somehow. Hampshire from here I've got to be looking at 2.5 hours drive each way. Then you start, well, my trailer's only little, so I'd have to hire a trailer, and you'd need something like a 14-foot trailer to hire, and you've got to load that up to the gunnels really, which then means my truck isn't quite big enough because I can only tow 2 ton, so you need a 3.5 tow ton truck. So then I've got to spend 6 grand getting a truck and 3 grand getting a trailer just to drive down to Hampshire to go and get rods, which seems absolutely balmy to me. And if Hampshire was closer to where I live, why not? It struck me as being quite funny that Andy gets on his little coppicing horse and gallops away and gets all a bit carried away with it, really, which is quite funny because of course he suggests that anybody who doesn't do what he says is just wasting their time. Well, he's allowed his opinion, and I'm allowed to disagree with it. Let me know what you think. Should I be travelling to Hampshire for hazel coppice rods? I'm happy enough doing what I do, knowing that I might not be earning a great deal, but we are gradually cutting our way into the National Forest, and as on a good note, there's quite a lot of volunteer work that goes on in the National Forest, cutting hazel, getting small sections of hazel into rotation, and I'm all for that. If I can be a bit of an advocate for cutting hazel on a regular rotation in the National Forest, then maybe in a decade or 2 time, and it's a long time, but the next generation may have some half decent hazel to go at, and we can keep the hazel industry alive and keep the woodlands thriving. As you guys are true woodlanders will know, hazel coppice is more than the product, it's the environmental impact that it has in bringing about wildflowers, butterflies, insects, bird life, raptors. It's just from the ground up, it brings a woodland into, it just makes a woodland thrive, coppice. Anyway, I've been on my soapbox now, so what we'll do, we'll go off and get some brush cutting done. And thanks for listening to that. I just have to get these little things off my chest sometimes. It's interesting to get your point of view. Should someone travel for several hours to go and get hazel rods? What would you do? Boy, I'm absolutely freezing today. It's not really been much above 5 degrees all day, and now it's chucking down with rain again. Just had Reuben up. He's just popped up, say hello. He's not seen the woodland before. He does a bit of landscaping. He's sort of like a young version of Del Boy. He just does all sorts. Although maybe not Del Boy, because Del Boy never made any money, but Reuben always seems to make money doing bits of all sorts. Fair play to him anyway. I've not shown you the results of today's, what we've managed to do, but we've managed to knock a fair old bit off. So I'll update you in a couple of days when we get back to do some more. See you in a bit. Morning. Today is pretty much the same as what we were doing the other day. I didn't get a chance to do any work yesterday. I was busy on another project, a secret project. You probably won't be interested, but it keeps me entertained. I noticed we've cracked the 600 subscribers, which is absolutely awesome. You guys, 600 of you, are following me, my adventures, our adventures in the woodland here in Derbyshire, in the Midlands, in the National Forest. So if you're new, welcome aboard. It's good to have you along. Hope you stay and enjoy the weird things I do. The bad news is it's more bramble bashing. There's been a fair old bit this year because over the last few years I've not been able to do as much as I'd like. Did you hear a bee then? I thought it was cold, but we've got bumblebees about. Where's he come from? Was it a she? Aren't all bumblebees she's? Are all bees she's? Are all worker bees she's? The fundamental questions of life. Anyway, where was I? Yes, so I'm hoping that in subsequent years we can perhaps be a little bit better organised. Now I understand some of you might be wondering, what on earth is he smashing so much bramble for? And I know I had a bit of rant last week about the spikes, but I'm not dead against bramble. I mean, after all, the berries taste amazing. One of my most favourite berries. And also, bramble can have a beneficial process in woodland management. Because when they swamp and cover an area, what that often does is it suppresses the grass. And when the grass is suppressed and the brambles take over, it allows sometimes chance for seedlings to grow inside the bramble and then to be protected from browsing. So in a way the bramble is like the pioneer species. I'm not dead against bramble, but you knew there was a but, didn't you? But for me, just part of the ongoing management process, I find as coppice worker, I spend a lot of my time on the ground. The badgers have been digging. On the ground, in amongst all the vegetation. I have huge difficulties with bramble wrapping around my legs, and I don't like it. It makes my coppice management very, very difficult. So I take an executive decision and once a year do a whole load of bramble smashing, because it just fits our woodland management objectives. I can't get in to manage properly if I don't knock some of it back. And then also you've got the fact that the muntjac deer tend to hunker down into it, so the more I create habitat for the muntjac, the more the muntjac keep coming back. And what they do is they eat all the coppice shoots as they come up, so all the new growth that's come from the stool, they just graze it right down, and eventually, if that keeps going on, it kills the stool. The muntjac are not my friend, really. We try and keep it in some sort of cycle, so rather than smashing it all down so there's never any fruit, because bramble takes 2 years to put fruit on, I try and do it every couple of years. Now some of this hasn't been done for 3 years, and that's why I've got a little bit behind with it. I don't want you to think that I'm just hate everything spiky. So I'm not telling you you've got to go and smash all your bramble down. You've got to make your own decision on that. On another hot topic in the woodland system, I don't much care for ivy neither. To me, and this is only a point of view, don't go mad at me, ivy is usually a result of a very dark, poorly managed woodland. A woodland that's actively managed with lots of light tends to get very little ivy. It's usually because of deep darkness that it tends to swamp then. And when you get ground cover ivy, of course, then you don't get anything else growing. So for that, I'm not a great fan of ivy either. Apart from the fact that it creates this huge sail effect on trees. But I know that's controversial, and you'll no doubt disagree, and that's fine. We can disagree and we can still be friends. This is that area I was going on about the other day, that the blackthorn, all sorts of nastiness. We've made a pretty big impact down here. What do you reckon? So I've got a little bit more to do there, and then we've got to dive into all that under the larch then, over there. Boy, my shoulder's killing me. All the weight's on one shoulder and it pulls it down. We have been bramble smashing here, in here, here, in here, and here. And believe it or not, that is by no means all of what I wanted to get done. I'm going to pack my tools away. Worst case scenario, I think I'm going to have to do another day next week. So I need at least another half day down the bottom end, and then there's some odd bits at the top end I could do with doing, because they've not been done for maybe 6 years, 7 years. I've also got 50 bean poles to go and prep just now. And then I've got to get an ash pole out as well for a guy who wants to make longbows with it or something. Anyway, wanted to say thanks ever so much for your endurance and patience this week with what really is just a lot of bramble bashing. And if you're not into bramble bashing and you've managed to watch through all of it, you deserve a medal. Trust me, it's harder doing it than it is watching it. So I'm going to pack up. Remember, if you're able to, try and enjoy some woodland paradise as soon as you can, and I'll see you on the next woodlog.